This is the OldPreMeds podcast, session number 72. You're a non-traditional student entering the medical field on your terms. You may have had some hiccups along the way, but now you're ready to change course and go back and serve others as a physician. This podcast is here to help answer your questions and help educate you on your non-traditional journey to becoming a physician. Welcome to the OldPreMeds podcast. My name is Dr. Ryan Gray, and I'm your host here on this podcast, as well as the Premed Years, the MCAT podcast, and specialty stories. Go check out everything that we have to offer at mededmedia.com. That's MEDED media.com. Today, we have another great question from the oldpremeds.org forums, which is where we take questions to answer here on the podcast. And this one is a little bit sad. Sadder is not the right word, but it's somebody who's discouraged as a post-bacc student. So let's go ahead and dive in and ask this question and answer it too. It says, hello, I am currently in a post-bacc program as my second chance attempt. Second chance is in quotes there. I graduated from my undergraduate program with a biology degree, but did horrible. I was not focused, and my extracurricular activities were my priority. I ended up graduating with a 2.6 GPA. I know, ridiculous. I thought it would be a good idea for me to apply to a post-bacc program to show med schools that I actually can succeed in higher level science classes. Unfortunately, this was not the case. I always have something going on at home with family, or I'm working a lot. I think I've been living where I am for so long that I just need a fresh start somewhere else with no distractions. And I only work because it's the only way I can provide for myself, but it definitely takes away from my studies. I feel like I'm just a complete failure once again. I earned 3 C's, a D in the post-bacc program, 3 C's and a D in the post-bacc program, which I know looks bad on my transcript, but I am taking the class over I got a D in. I'm most likely not even going to boost my undergraduate GPA over a 3.0 like I thought I would. I've faced the facts that my undergrad GPA will just not be competitive. Being a doctor is still my dream, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get there, even if I have to take a billion more steps than the average, but is all hope lost for me? If not, what next steps could I take? What would doing a master's program be smart? I know it will be difficult convincing any school of my capabilities, but I'm ready to put in the work. Any suggestions would be amazing. All right, so let's face the facts, as I think you mentioned in here as well. You have shown time and time again that you are not a good student. Now, I'm not sure if taking a master's degree, a master's coursework, is going to fix that for you. What you need to fix is yourself. And you've mentioned a couple things that maybe you just need a fresh start somewhere and get rid of the distractions. But is that truly going to give you the fresh start? I would love for you to go and listen to episode 230 of the Premed Years. You can find that at medicalschoolhq.net/230. In that podcast, I talked to Chad, who recently was accepted to 2 medical schools. He was a lot like you, always had something going on and was never able to focus on coursework. Did terrible. I don't know if he did it as terrible as you. I forget the specifics. Didn't do well in his undergrad. Didn't do well in post-bacc, and was rejected from Caribbean medical schools. And I jokingly said in that podcast, I'm like, I didn't know Caribbean medical schools rejected people, but apparently they do. And so he eventually went on to a SMP, a special master's program, which is a post-bacc, basically a master's post-bacc, and did well and was accepted to the medical school associated with that SMP, and was also accepted at another school. So you could look into something like that, an SMP, but based on your track record, I'm not sure what's going to change. So I think you need to continue taking some undergraduate classes and make sure that you're ready to commit to an SMP, which is going to be another $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. Don't take that next step unless you know you're ready, unless you have fixed yourself. Now, spoiler alert for episode 230 of the Pre-Med Years, what Chad had to do was he quit working. And he actually found work that was flexible enough for him to go and do what he needed to do. But for the most part, he got rid of all of his commitments and focused on being a student. And he was living on food stamps, on different public assistance programs, and he talked about that in the podcast. So that's something for you to think about. What lengths can you go to make sure that you have a roof over your head and food on the table, but also you have time to study? So fix those things. Make sure that you're dedicated to being a student, that you can be a student, and make sure, let's be truthful here, let's make sure that you're just not a bad student and you're making up these other excuses. So get rid of the distractions, take some classes, do well in them, prove to yourself that you're ready for that next step, and then take that next step and look into an SMP, a special master's program. That's the only master's program I would look at for you. Don't do a MPH, don't do any other master's program. Go do an SMP if you can get into one. So that's what I have for you. If you have a question you want answered here on the Old Pre-Meds podcast, go to oldpremeds.org, sign up for an account if you don't already have one, and leave a question there for us to answer here on the podcast. I always say us, but it's really just me here these days. So I would love to answer your question if we can get to it. Have a great week. Don't forget to check out all of the episodes, all of the shows that we're doing at the Old Pre-Meds podcast over at oldpremeds.org. See you next week.